Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me today. I want to have a long talk with you guys today. I'm going to sit down and give you a talk, just like if you and I were hanging out in the living room or hanging out in the boat for a day. I want to tell you some key things that you can do that's really going to help you catch more fish over the course of next year. There's some changes that you can make in how you approach fishing, and there's a few foundational elements that I want to share with you guys that a lot of people don't know about it. But if you adopt these and you incorporate some of these ideas that I'm going to talk about in your fishing, I can promise you guys you're going to see an uptick in your success over the next year, because doesn't matter where you fish, doesn't matter how many days you fish, if you just utilize some of the stuff we're going to talk about. That is sort of abstract a little bit. It's definitely going to help you guys out. Also, guys, quick invitation, just like to invite everybody to please hit that subscribe button here at Intuitive Angling. Thank you very much for everybody that's been doing that recently. We've had some good channel growth over the last couple weeks. So if you subscribe and like the videos, hit that like button and share the videos. It's a good way to push everything out there. And also a big thank you, everybody, that all you guys that have been using and bookmarking all the links I put in my descriptions. If you're one of the viewers that use those links, big thank you from me and my family. We really appreciate that, and I'd like to invite everybody else to do so. Okay, guys, I sort of want to have just sort of a wide-ranging conversation here. Not really anything specific, but some things that should be on the forefront of your mind as far as things that can really help you guys catch more fish. So I want to talk in two different aspects here. I want to talk a little bit about locating fish, and then I want to talk a little bit about catching fish. As far as once you locate them, some things you can just basic, fundamental, but yet advanced things that you can do to find them and to catch them both. So the first thing that you have to do to be a good bass angler is you have to consistently be able to find fish. Now, when we're talking about finding fish on lakes, that's specifically what I'm gearing this video to, because yeah, if you fish rivers or ponds or small lakes or stuff like that, it's different. But on lakes, I want to talk about larger type lakes that most anglers fish with a bass boat. One of the things that really intimidates fishermen more than anything else is they don't know where to start at. They don't know where to begin their search at, put their boat in the water, and it's like, oh man, I'm not really sure where I want to go or where I want to do here, what I want to figure out. So the best piece of advice that I can give you guys when you're starting out trying to quickly locate fish before you can figure out how to catch them is you have got to narrow the lake down. You cannot fish the entire lake in one day at all. So in order to find fish quickly, you have to put yourself in the highest percentage area that particular day that you're out there. So here's how you do that. Here's how you prepare for it and actually do it. First of all, before you go to the lake, do a little bit of research. You know, it's easy. Any lake that you go to pretty much has some type of fishing report on it. Now, fishing reports, granted, guys, are usually not much help, because a lot of the people that put out fishing reports are not the greatest fishermen in the world. But at least if you do some research, you can get sort of a vibe on how people have been fishing, or, you know, how the fishing is overall. So that can be a lot of help or a little bit of help, depending upon how the quality of information that you can find. The next thing that you can do is get on Google Earth. Now, before you go to a lake, it doesn't matter even if you know the lake very good. One of the best tools that you have to your disposal is just download Google Earth, get on there, and do sort of a mental, visual, flyover of the lake from Google Earth, because Google Earth tells you a tremendous amount. It can tell you different type of cover that's in the lake. You can identify where the boat docks are. You can identify where lay down trees are. You can identify where rock transitions, where rocky banks, mud banks. It's a great tool, to save you a lot of time. And another thing that I really like about Google Earth, it tells you and it shows you the different water clarities on the lake. So if you look at the satellite imagery of Google Earth, you can see distinct water clarity changes based upon what part of the lake you're in. So by doing that, by going on Google Earth and getting a sort of a mental picture of the water clarity and the type of cover in correlation with your seasonal patterns and whatever information that you found out, that's a good way to help you out. Now, my favorite way to quickly locate bass on any lake across the country is when you look at a map of a lake. just pick out the two biggest creek arms on the lake. And right off the bat, that's going to cut the size of the lake down, 90%. So instead of trying to find fish on a 40,000 acre lake, you've narrowed your lake down to just a couple thousand acres within those major creek arms, because most major creek arms, they have a diversity of options for you in there. They have secondary points, they have, different type of bank angles, bluffs, flat banks, gravelly banks. They got whatever covers in the lake. It could be grass beds or boat docks or stumps, coves. There's just a lot of diversity. And bass live in major creeks all year long. It's like, I don't care what time of year it is, there's a large population of bass living in the major creeks on any body of water. Now, granted, some of these major creek arms may get a little bit more fishing pressure, but there's a good reason for that, because most of the time there's more fish in them. I mean, creeks tend to offer a lot for fish in terms of different type of water column depth options they can get into, and cover, and the ability to, have staging areas. They're very attractive to fish. So narrow it down to the creeks. That's going to allow you to discover those, fish pretty quick. So once you do decide what area you want to fish, say for example, okay, I've decided I want to fish, Buck Creek today. And when you go in there, you got to divide that creek up into like the upper third, the mid third, and the back third. But say you decide where you want to start fishing. Say you want to go back and you want to fish the back third part of Buck Creek. That's going to be where you start your day at. So the first thing you do is, once you get back in there, don't really have a preconceived notion about how you're going to fish. It's like, in fact, a lot of times, guys, I don't even tie any baits on until I get to my first spot, because when you land on your first spot, let's say you run to the back 2/3 part of Buck Creek. First thing you do is shut the boat down. You don't have anything tied on. Look at the water visibility. What is your water clarity? And what is your water temperature? That's going to give you a big indication of the best lure selections for that particular situation. And then take note of the cover. It's like, you got rocky banks, do you got riprap, or you got a bunch of boat docks back here, do you got some lily pads, is there a bunch of lay down trees? Look at the type of cover, and then determine what you think is going to be the best technique to allow you to quickly locate those fish. So let's say, for example, we're back in Buck Creek. I go back in there and I'm looking at the water visibility, and the water visibility is 2 foot and water temperature is 65 degrees. And I'm looking back in there, and there's a nice rocky channel bank there. So first thing I do is like, okay, I got a nice rocky channel bank. It's some off-colored water. Water temperatures 70s. This is a perfect situation for a crankbait. So I try a crankbait. Maybe I'll put on a shad pattern crankbait and fish that for a little bit. Not getting any bites. Next thing I do, okay, I really think that they're going to be on this crankbait. I got a square bill crankbait on. Everything looks good. Tried the shad pattern for 20 minutes. Mix it up. Try a perch pattern or blackback chartreuse. Give it a little bit better option. If you fish down through that same rocky bank and nothing, you say, well, maybe these fish don't want to chase a crankbait. Maybe they want something slow. So then you go back down the same bank and you put like a finesse jig or creature bait or Texas rig worm, and you slow down. You start picking up the cover. You start picking apart the cover, lay down trees, dock here, there, stump, and you start catching a fish. Let's say you're pitching a brush hog and you start catching a few fish. At that point, based upon how many bites you're getting or not, it tells you right off the bat, okay, they want a slow bait. So how do I maximize this area even more, even though I'm getting a few baits? So if you identified the lure category that those fish want, then experiment a little bit more with like profiles of it. Instead of using a full-size brush hog, go down to a mid-size brush hog or a baby brush hog. Instead of using green pumpkin, put a little green pumpkin chartreuse, or go to a June bug. Just tweak it and experiment a little bit. I'm talking not for very long, like 10 or 15 minutes. And if you're not doing any good with your experimentation, just slow down with your, green pumpkin regular size brush hog and just start fishing it and start duplicating that pattern around the creek. Maybe go to the other big creek that you've identified. And that's how you develop a pattern, and that's how you develop the best technique and the best lure category. Other things that you can do with that, guys, is you can experiment with your cadence and your speed of retrieve, your casting angles. There's a lot of different things you can do to figure out how to catch those bass. Because here's the thing about it. If you're in a major creek arm of a lake, again, I promise you there's a big population of bass in there. You just have to figure out how to catch those fish. And a lot of times you may be in a not so great part of a creek, but if you're using the right technique, you're still going to catch some fish. But if you're in a part of the creek that has a lot of fish in it and there's a big population of fish, you may not have to have the best technique or the best lure category, and you're still going to catch fish. But what you're trying to do in bass fishing, the key is you want to maximize your area. Now, this is one of the big things I learned from Aaron Martins, because my buddy Aaron Martins, he was a master at maximizing an area. So what he would do, let's say, for example, Aaron goes back to our theoretical bank, in Buck Creek. Aaron's back in Buck Creek. He's got this channel bank, that's a 1/4 mile long back in Buck Creek, caught a few fish on a crankbait or whatever. He wouldn't leave it. He'd go through that bank with 30 different lures, 30 different casting angles until he figured out what they wanted. And he would basically have the attitude, I'm going to catch every fish on that bank simply by adjusting my techniques, my colors, all that type of stuff. I'll give you one quick story about Aaron here, what I'm talking about that's pertinent to maximizing an area. We were fishing, I used to have a 40-acre lake, up by Lamar, Missouri. And Aaron and I were up there, we were fishing it one day, and, we were on the lake fishing. I always did really good on a jig on my lake up there. Excuse me. So Aaron said, he goes, we were fishing together. He goes, I know they'll bite a scrounger here. They will bite a scrounger on this lake. So to make a long story short, Aaron experimented fishing a scrounger there for like an hour. Never had a bite on it. And he was down in the boat. It's like he'd fish something for 20 minutes. He'd change size of the scrounger. He'd put a different size head on. He'd put a different size trailer on it. He put a different color. He was in his tackle box 20 times tweaking this scrounger to put different sizes of scroungers on. So finally, about an hour into it, he hadn't caught anything. About an hour into it, he puts on a little bitty tiny 1/8 ounce head scrounger and a little bitty zoom tiny fluke on it. So this thing was like super, super tiny. And guys, he put that thing on, and all of a sudden it's like you just turned on a light switch. He just started catching them right and left on that. But he was convinced that those fish were there. It was a matter of just changing up the techniques, specifically with the scrounger that day, until you figured out how to trigger those fish into biting. That's another thing about bass fishing, is you have to trigger fish into biting, because bass do not feed out of hunger very often. They do most of their feeding at night. They're opportunistic, but the thing that generates a strike from a bass, specifically during the daytime of the year, are other factors behind being hungry. That's why you have to capitalize on their reaction instincts, their curiosity instincts, their competition instincts, their there are other things that trigger those strikes, primarily from a reaction strike or a curiosity strike. A lot of times bass will come down on a lure close and they'll study it, and they'll hit it or they'll pick it up out of curiosity a lot of times. And the thing that triggers those fish to biting, where they actually go from analyzing a lure to actually inhaling it, is a lot of times the visual appeal of it, the color of it, or how you're manipulating that lure to trigger the strike. So there's a lot of different variables to it. But the main thing with it, guys, just a quick, just a foundational overview of things you can do to help you catch fish and, find fish, is just stay with those major creek arms and just sort of have the 15-minute rule. Try something for 15 minutes. If it's not working, try something else, and go back and forth between changing your lure categories, from like reaction baits to slow baits, and changing the size of your lures and changing the colors of the lures and the casting angles of those lures. And it's a matter of putting all that puzzle together, because bass fishing, it's just like hunting. It's like you have to find the fish, but you also have to find out what is going to trigger that fish to hit. And that can be some simple things, or it can be a combination of a lot of different things. And that's what makes bass fishing the hardest sport in the world, yet the most awesome sport in the world. So anyway, guys, hope it helps out. We'll talk later.